Hi again, this is Michelle. Yeah, that was really quick for my last video. I thought I'd go ahead and have both videos today. The first video I recorded, I tried to introduce myself and show what I've been coloring, and it was about 40 minutes long, and for most people that might be okay, but for my introduction I didn't really, want it that long, and I wanted to keep it under 10 minutes. So I thought I would do a separate video and kind of talk a little bit about how I've been coloring, what kinds of pages I have, and show some of the different things that I've worked on. I am pretty new to adult coloring. I have only been really interested in coloring in art since, well, I've been interested my entire life, but it didn't become a real focus until February. I was spending a lot of time playing computer games and being on the computer for work, and I needed something that would get me off the computer for a while. My hands and my wrists were hurting. I wasn't doing myself any favors being on the computer that long, especially with the chronic pain. And so I moved to coloring. I also started taking weekly art lessons, which has worked out really well for me, more so because it's helping me think creatively. I am a control freak a little bit, and that's kind of funny if I can find it here in a moment. Of course, now I'm all out of order here, so I apologize for that. But this right here is my mantra, and I'm putting this next to my desk because it is the absolute truth. And I know it's backwards, but it's like, I'm not a control freak, I'm a control enthusiast. And I find that hilarious, and I am truly a control freak. I'm a perfectionist. Everything has to be exactly right, and I have to finish it before I start something else. And I was really stressed out to start with when I was coloring and doing art, because I had to try to get out of that mindset. And a lot of my art lessons have been, just trying to think creatively and think differently, and it's been extremely helpful. So as my art teacher says, it's only paper. So if I make a mistake or I do something wrong, then it's just paper, and it's okay. And if I think it's a mistake, then it's not really a mistake, it's a learning experience. I think, oh, okay, I don't do that, and I don't do that again. 9 times out of 10, I can work around it and still finish what I'm doing. I don't really want to abandon it. So I had to really get out of that perfectionist mindset, because the whole point of coloring and art was supposed to be to help with my anxiety and other issues, and it was just making my anxiety worse. So when I first started out, and let me see if I can find it. I bet I put it back in the binder. There we go. I'm terrible. I was so organized, and now I'm not. So, but when I first started out, I just wanted to try things out, and I wanted to see if I was going to like coloring, long term. So I went and I got, a little pack of Prismacolors from Amazon, and I went to the dollar store, and I just colored. And it was, since apparently I can't find it was a couple little cats, and I just used every color in the Prismacolors. And I enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I want to look a little more into this. So I started watching videos, and I started looking at, actual techniques and things like that. And at first, like I said, I was completely overwhelmed, and it made my anxiety really kick up, because when you first start out and you get your books and you get your pencils or whatever media you're using, if you're like me, and I think a lot of people think this way, you get that book and you're like, okay, I'm ready to color. And then you think, oh no, what if I mess this up? The book's going to be ruined. Like, you're just terrified to put that pencil to the coloring book. And that was me at the beginning. I colored a couple little random pages that I had printed out on just regular printer paper. And I felt like I was ready to actually, try techniques and blending and things. I had bought some Joanna Bastard books, and because that's kind of, everybody buys the Joanna Bastard books, but they're good, and that's why they do that, because the line art in it is great. And so I decided to start, and I kind of wussed out, and I was like, well, I'll just do a title page, and that way it's not a full page. And I actually do have this one, thank goodness. So this is the one that I really started using technique on, and this is from Enchanted Forest by Joanna Bastard, as I said, and that was probably around the end of March, maybe. And that little bit, the first half of that picture, probably took me a week to do, because even though I went ahead and pushed through it and started coloring and stuff, I was so focused on the detail and making sure everything was perfect, and it was taking forever, and I was so anxious about it. It was just making my anxiety worse. So I kind of stopped with that for a while, and I started looking at some of the adult coloring groups, and I joined a few of them, and they have weekly and monthly challenges and things like that. So one week there was a challenge in Simple Art for Adults to color, I think it was flowers. And so this was the first finished piece I had, where I was using a lot of technique. I did a lot of blends, mostly Prismacolor, because they're softer. They are a whole lot easier for me to use and don't cause as much pain in my hands and my wrists, especially if I do like my art teacher wants me to do, and just use light layers and not death grip the pencils. So they're a lot easier on me. I have chronic pain in my upper right side of my back, and really bearing down on a pencil or having to really push to put color on the paper causes it to hurt, and a lot more. And so I like the Prismacolors because they allow me to be able to do the light layers but still get the deeper color like that. So that was Prismacolors. I think I used one Faber-Castell in that, and then it was Tombows and a white Uniball pen. And I like it. Red and pink aren't normally my go-to colors, so but it was red flowers. That's what it was. So they're not really my go-to colors, but I'm proud of the work that I did do on that. So I went and shifted to Creative Haven books. Marjorie Sarnett, I believe is how you say her name, has a number of books that I just love. It's just beautiful art, and a lot of really neat detail. And a couple of the books she has is there's a cat's one, there is a kitten's one, there are owls. I think Fanciful Foxes is the other one. And so I bought a couple of her books, and that was really what I did next, was work on her books. And this is the first book the first page, and this is from Creative Cats, or I think it's right, Creative Cats. This is the first page that I finished, where I had a lot of detail work. I did do a lot of light layers, and I absolutely, to this day, still love how the cat turned out. There are so many layers on that cat, and this is a perfect example of why light layers can get you the shading that you want. The details in this one took about as long as putting down the color for everything else. So it took a long time. It took a couple weeks at least, and I had to take breaks and come back to it because there was just so much there. So I love that. And then the Marjorie Sarnett Facebook group has monthly challenges and weekly color alongs and things like that. Well, in April they had a monthly challenge using a palette from one of Ranger Doug's posters. or some of his art. And so I picked a palette, and I got a page from her Owl's book, and this was the result. This one, I learned some stuff. I got impatient. I started putting the pencil down heavier, and with like Prismacolors, you have to worry about like a waxy buildup, and it's harder to blend the harder you press down on the initial layers. So if you can see this, it's really shiny, and it's smeared. There are a couple places where it's smeared because of that, and I was really frustrated, but at that point I didn't want to abandon it. So there was a lesson to be learned there, and I like how it turned out. I'm pretty proud of it, but I wouldn't say it's probably my favorite page. Finally, in May, they had a color, I think it's Pretty in Pink challenge, and so I went to her Kittens book at this time, and I ended up doing this page, and this one is it's a love-hate for me, because every layer or every new media that I tried on this thing, it was, oh, this is awesome, and then the next thing I try, oh, I hate this. And it was such a journey, because it was such a love-hate from the get-go. And this was the one that first one that I used. I tried to throw everything but the kitchen sink at it, so to speak. I had alcohol markers, I had Tombows, I even got out the water brush and did some watercolors. That's where the pink flowers come into play with the Tombows. Colored pencil, of course, Bic markers, I mean, everything. Gel pens. And I really dig it. This wouldn't have been a palette that I would have even chosen from the get-go. I love bold colors, but this, not to this extent, especially because, hey, look at all the pink in there. But I really like it. I like how it turned out. And that's something I want to mention too, is that when you first start out coloring and you watch all these channels, you see people that have, this book and that book, or use colored pencils, use markers, and you think, oh, I want that. So you go and you get that coloring book, or whatever else they're talking about, and you amass. You can get so overwhelmed, and you can amass quite a collection if you really put your mind and, unfortunately, your bank account to use for it. But the thing is, it's so much better, and I wish I had known this when I first started. It's so much better to just buy a few books, a couple little small packs of colored pencils, and just try different things. Figure out your style. I bought 3 of the Joanna Basford books when I first started coloring, and they're beautiful books, and I do love them, and I will color in them, but there's so many leaves, and I can only color leaves so long, and that's something I had to learn, is that I am not a huge fan of coloring nothing but leaves and a few other things thrown in. So I started to develop my own style in terms of looking at other books, maybe looking at some that aren't as well known. And I have many books now, but they're different. Like I don't know how to put it, but they're all like a little bit different, and that's because those are the things that I want to try myself, or things that I'm drawn to. So if I had any advice for somebody just starting out, like I know it's tempting, but just try to start out small. And the biggest thing is just figure out what your style is. You may hate putting down multiple layers in colored pencil, but you prefer markers. I do find it kind of funny that colored pencil was my first go-to, and still is kind of, the standard for me. And I was trying to find something that wouldn't hurt my wrists and hands, and well, if I press down hard enough, it's going to hurt it just as bad as a computer. So but I'm starting to branch out into other things, and I love how much easier it is to apply some of the other media. So Yeah, for those that are just starting out, try to start small if you can. Figure out what you like and what you don't. And then when you figure that out, then you can, then try pastels, then try markers. And you'll also develop your own kind of color style. I struggle with pastels, and I'm going to have to challenge myself to do lighter colors. I love strong, bold color, which again, depending on your colored pencils and how many layers you put down, is not the ideal media for strong, bold colors. But that's what I love, and I love kind of bucking a trend. So if there's a tree that, green leaves and a brown trunk, I want to color the leaves purple and the trunk yellow. I mean, I just, it drives me crazy to color things the way they're supposed to be colored by default. So, but this was all stuff I had to learn over time. And I wish, like I said at the beginning, I had only had a few different things. So I love the art supplies that I have now, but there are a lot of books that I probably won't color very much in, other than drawing them at random. So again, yeah, save your wallet a little bit and try to take it slow. It's hard to, I know, but trying one thing at a time is also going to keep you from being in my shoes and being completely overwhelmed when you want to start something new, but you don't know what you want to use more. So, anyway, let me get to some of the pages. Like I said, I started coloring in February, getting to it like more seriously, and I actually found the page. Look at me. The very first picture I colored was from a cats and dogs coloring book. I just picked up a couple from the dollar store, and I guess my goal was to use every Prismacolor I had. And so this was the very first one I did. And as you can see, there's no real technique to it. No blending. It was just what they call a straight color. You just color. And I loved it. I really enjoyed it, and it was something different. And this is kind of what started it all. And so that, led me up to the other stuff. And of course, once you get started, it's like you get bitten by the coloring book. You keep wanting to learn new techniques and do different things. So it's, in some ways, I love the fact that I went from that to, this at the beginning of May. And I know I'm getting better. And a year from now, it'll be really interesting to go back and see how much has changed in a year. So I showed you some of the Marjorie Sarnet pieces that I did, and the Enchanted Forest, where I first started out. Or no, I didn't. Hang on. If I've already shown this, I apologize. So this is Joanna Bastard's Enchanted Forest, and I know some of you are horrified that I just bent that back, but I'm not. These books are going to get used. When I first started out, I wouldn't have done this. I would have freaked out, but this was the first page I did, and like I said, I only got to this point, and it looks wonderful. I mean, I love it, but I spent so much time trying to get the blends exactly right and erase every little spot I colored outside the lines, because I'm going to do that a lot, and it just made my anxiety worse, and that's not the point of this for me. So with each page that you color, at first you just kind of have to make yourself do it and say, okay, I'm going to do this. And you do it, and you may love it, you may hate it. But each time that you do that, and each page that you finish, you're just going to get more confidence about it. It's going to get easier. Now I just say, okay, I'm coloring this thing, and in one of the books, I used alcohol markers, and it did bleed through to the page behind it, even though I used gesso. And I said, oh, well, too bad. That page is just, it's a page. It's a page out of a couple dozen coloring books. So if I'm going to do that, maybe I should pick a page behind it that I'm not really fond of anyway. So you just have to go with it. You just have to kind of push yourself to do it. And I'm telling you, each time you do, and each time you try something new, it's going to get so much easier to do. And then when you, a couple months later, it's like no sweat, right? So, so I was working on that one, and the Marjorie Sarnett. I also did do some buddy colors in Simple Art for Adults, is one of the coloring groups on Facebook. And the first buddy color was from Magical Jungle, and this got me into the Joanna Bassford books. And it was this picture. So I wanted to do something different. Like I said, I buck trends. If the leaves are supposed to be green, I don't want to color them green. I want to color them something else. A challenge for me is to color things like the way it's, I wouldn't say supposed to be colored, but the way nature intended for you to color it. But so with this one, instead of green leaves and a gray elephant, I wanted to switch it. I said, let's do gray leaves and a green elephant. And this was really awesome because I would have never considered doing gray for leaves, and these were so much more complicated than you would think. I used every type of gray. I used warm grays, cool grays, French grays, everyone I could think of to throw at this. And I love the technique in it and how it turned out. But like overall, it's probably not my favorite picture. I did try some chalk pastels in the background and learned a few things. There's a couple little smears on there. You don't want to use glitter glue before you use chalk pastels because it's going to get everywhere and the pastel is going to get wet and smear, and it's just awful. So anyway, like I said, I was really proud of that one. That was the first one I had done in the Joanna Bassford books. So I was proud of the stuff, the technique that I used for it. Now, the buddy color that followed was also from Magical Jungle, and it was this one. So this one I colored about the same time that I completed the kittens page for May, and I had just started out using the Tombos and using a water brush with them, and I was loving it. It was so much easier on my hands. It was something different. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to put gesso on one of these pages and I'm going to try and see what happens. And I'm going to try to make it as much watercolor and Tombos as I can. And that's what I did. All these little blends and everything, they're either blending the Tombow markers together or using a little palette to put the color on, using a water brush to actually brush it on. So I do like this. This is probably kind of in the middle to favorite level of the pages. I do like it. This is a perfect example of how I work. So I joke and say I'm lazy by nature. And so I started coloring this, and I spent so much time on the watercolor part, and I enjoyed it. I had so much fun with it. And then it got really close to when the color was supposed to end. And there was one night I spent a lot of time on it, and I was so tired, and I was so just over it. My plan was to do a background on this, and then when I got to the end, I said, you know what, I'm over this. This looks wonderful as is, and I want to do something else, so we're going to call this good. Now, later on, I might come back and put a background on this. That's the thing. It doesn't have to just be finished. I can sit here and show this, and then 6 months later, if I want to come back and put a background, I can. I mean, there's no coloring book police. They're not going to come to your house and arrest you because you went back to one of your previous pieces and added something to it. So, you know, again, you have to just practice. You have to just color and do to get used to doing those types of things. Now, last couple I want to show you. Let me get a drink of water real quick. What goodness, I'm dry. My mouth is dry today. So, in between all of these colored pencil pieces and the mixed media pieces I've shown you. They're long, they're detailed, they take some time, and usually by the time I get done with one, I just want something easy to do. I don't really want to spend hours and hours coloring in little details with pencils. So I kind of learned that in between the really detailed pieces, I end up just wanting to do a simple color with markers or gel pens or something. That control enthusiast thing I showed you a second ago, that was all gel pens, and it was just one of those, I'm sitting on the couch and I'm lazy, I don't want to grab anything, because, you know, for all of us, there's so many things we want to do, and our time is just limited, right? And for people that have chronic fatigue or pain and different things like that, at least for me, when you do get the time to do it, usually I am so tired by that point that I don't really have enough energy. I want to do detailed work and I want to try new things, but I'm so tired that really, you know, it's easier for me to just sit and color with gel pens or markers, and it gives my hands and wrists a break too, because, you know, a marker is so much easier to put down than a colored pencil for even just, you know, one layer if you just want, you know, one bold color. So I wanted to do something that was kind of just simple in between all of those. And so I was looking at some of the Jade Summer books. Actually, one of the first ones I colored, which for some reason I can't find, was a Jade Summer book, and it was a cat where I just tried markers and all kinds of different things, and it was just patterned. So I started looking at some of the other Jade Summer books, and I come across a book called Baby Dragons. Now, it's not that I'm really a fan of dragons. I don't know what it was about this book. But the dragons and the drawings in it are absolutely adorable. And I have a feeling this will probably be the first book I complete. Now, for those of you that have been around for a while, any sort of Amazon printed book, like the Jade Summer books, is on what you call Create Space paper. And it is a toothy paper. Now, for things like Prismacolors and things like that, and I wish I had known this at the beginning, because the very first picture I tried to color was from a Jade Summer book, from an actual coloring book. And I was using my Prismacolors, and I was really frustrated because there was still white showing through. And that's because with the rougher paper, it needs a harder lead to really get down in the grooves and everything. And I didn't know that at the time. You can use your softer pencils, but usually you have to use mineral oil. Boy, there goes the accent. Or it's often called Gamsol to mineral spirits, not oil. Oh my goodness. To blend those, kind of melt the colors together and actually get them down in the grooves to not get that kind of gritty white texture. So I did get this, and I love it. And one of the good things about the Jade Summer books is, if you're not a fan of Create Space paper, every single one I bought, I have an opportunity to go download a free PDF of the entire book. So I can get the pictures that I love from these books, and if I really just hate the paper, or I decide I want to color one with my Copics and I don't really want to use the super rough paper and mess up the tips, then I can put marker paper in my printer and print it out on the paper that I want to use for what media I'm using. And I love that they do that. I think that really makes these worth the money. Usually they run about, I think about $7 on Amazon. They do start out at $5 when they are first released, for probably the weekend that they've been released, and then after 2 or 3 days they go up to the $7. I think it's $7 or $8. But that free PDF download of all the pictures, and sometimes you can get duplicates in these, and that's great, because for me personally, you know, I might do one in one color and be like, man, I really wish I had done this with that picture. well, I have another one to work with, or I can scan it and print it. So I really dig these books. Like I said, a lot of people avoid these because they don't like how it plays with certain media, but I really dig them, and I don't want to pass up on some really cute art just because of the paper. I mean, there's got to be a way around it, right? So I went into this book, and it was right after I finished one of those, I think it was 2 or 3 of those detailed colorings, and I just wanted something simple. I didn't want to have to worry about color palettes and a lot of technique, and just, over being, hours and hours over small pieces of the coloring page. So I got one of the pages from this book. I grabbed my Crayola colored pencils and my Crayola markers, and just all the stuff that, you would have as kids. Actually, the colored pencils are, the colored pencils are from when my brother was a kid, as well as the markers. So I just, and that is a testament to Crayola markers, because he is 25 this year. So even 10, 15 years ago, he had these markers, at least that far back. So that's a pretty good testament to how long they last without drying out. So I did this one. And the funniest thing to me is that even though I spent so much time on those other pages, I still feel like this one's my favorite one that I've done. And I used Crayola colored pencils on it. You can see some of the white has come through even with the Crayolas, but it didn't bother me. I did a little bit of blending. Again, it wasn't as easy to do with the harder lead. I did use some alcohol markers. Specifically, I have a small pack of Prismacolor markers for the dragon himself with the orange, and then with the water itself, that's really the only thing I did technique with, was I wanted to try putting the markers together and getting kind of a gradient on the water, and it worked out beautifully. And I also did some colored pencil over this marker, which I hadn't done before, and is ingenious, and From A Colorful Life talks about this all the time, and so many other people do this, and I don't know why I'm not doing it, because it would be so much easier on my hands. So anyway, I did some colored pencil over it, and I did some shadowing, as you can see, and I just love it. It's so hard to describe. I felt so free with this. It wasn't overcomplicated. I wasn't overthinking it. I didn't have a color palette. I just went and, okay, I want to try this color, and I want to try this color. And so what if they don't go together on the color wheel, right? And that was the thing. I get so anxious even when I'm coloring that it's so much easier for me to just, go with it. And that's kind of why I want to do the random picks for the media and the coloring books, because that kind of takes the thought process out of it. I don't have to sit there and worry and think and stress about what I want to do next, which again is kind of the opposite goal. So the next one I did kind of in between the more detailed pieces. I take that back. This one's my favorite one. I tell everybody this one's my spirit animal. Isn't he awesome? Like I said, I joke and say he's my spirit animal, especially the way I've been recently. And I call him Doug the Diabetes Dragon. I apologize to anybody that has diabetes that might be offended by that. But anyway, I just used markers and gel pens with this. This was the first one I tried my Cali Art markers with, and I wasn't fast enough with coloring like larger areas, so you can kind of see some lines, and I was really frustrated about that at first. And then I was like, oh well, okay, that's something to know for the future. And as I know, alcohol markers do bleed on Jade Summer pages, so it's good when you're coloring with those to just color a little bit up to the line art, because it will soak up into the line art. Otherwise, it's gonna bleed through to the other side. So I did Kelly Art markers. The back is actually a Bic marking alcohol marker. And then I used pretty much every glitter gel pen I had. If you can see, there's just shiny everywhere. And there are pinks, and there's, you know, light purples and some pastels in this. So many things I wouldn't have normally reached for. And I absolutely love this. Again, just going with it, just, okay, let's try this color. Okay, let's try this color. And I loved it. And like I said, these pictures in this book are just fantastic. So the last one I did, and I just finished this past week. This past week was like a wrap-up of works in progress. The only one I have now is, oddly enough, the title page in that Joanna Bastford book, so maybe I need to go back and finish that. Oh, actually, there's one more. But I made really good progress. Okay. So this one I finished just the other day. Again, I got to the point where I just wanted to color with some markers. My husband actually wanted to color with me that night, so I didn't want to, again, overthink it. I just grabbed this book, of course. I am going to finish this book for anything else, because this is just my go-to book. It never fails. I'll find something in here I want to color. I grabbed my Bics and my Sharpies mostly, and this is what I have. So like I said, I just finished this a few days ago. It's all alcohol marker with the exception of the background. I got a set of pan pastels and I haven't used them hardly at all. I did try them on the back part of this because I couldn't find a light enough marker that I liked. And it works pretty well. Again, with Create Space, it's going to have a little more white showing through, but that's, you know, a given. The purple fruits are like the best thing about this to me, and I love how with the dragon where it's red and yellow, you know. And I joked with my husband and I said, if we were this two-headed dragon, this would be me and this would be him. And I think anybody that knows this would say that's pretty spot on. And again, oddly enough, in this picture, I actually stuck with what color the grass is supposed to be, and the trees, and the sky. But again, it was just not overthinking it, and just having fun with it. And I'm sure here shortly, I will pick another page in that one. I have other Jade Summer books, and they're wonderful, but I just keep going back to that one. I don't know what it is about it, but It does. It makes me happy. I really enjoy coloring in that one. I enjoy coloring overall. I mean, the more I do it, again, the more relaxed I get about everything. And really, that's something that's you can put as a life lesson. Because I overstress and I overthink everything. That's why I have anxiety. I have a hamster constantly on a wheel in my head, and it never fails. If I don't have to worry about something and it works out, then it tries to find something else to worry about. I mean, it never stops. And to sit here and do something where it doesn't have to be perfect, I'm going to color outside the lines and just leave it. Don't spend hours trying to make the perfect piece, and just let things go and say, if you're happy with it, it's good enough. And if something does go wrong, chalk it up as a learning experience. If something goes really wrong and you can't finish it, then, you simply say, well, in life, you can't say it's just paper. But you just say, hey, it's, it is what it is for the moment, but that doesn't affect the future. So I honestly, here I am getting, making this big picture stuff. What a bad pun. Anyway, this is a really good life lesson. And I think, especially with my art teacher, she's showing me techniques where I have to draw, like I said, I don't have a death grip on my pencil or my pen or whatever. I have to go down on the pencil farther down and do lighter layers and loosen my arm up as I'm doing it. And that's actually helping up in my shoulder area. When I pay attention, I actually do that. So There's just so many benefits to art and adult coloring that really, I mean, and probably with any hobby that can apply to, you know, larger overall life. And at least that's the case for me. So finally, the last coloring page I'm going to show. See, look, I went 40 minutes just talking about these color pages. This is the other work in progress I have. I had bought some Arteza pencils, and I wanted to just try them out on one page, and I, oddly enough, picked the Joanna Basford book, but there's no leaves in this, so that's probably why. So this is the one I'm working on right now. And I have these the lighter, as you can see, this is a good example of your light initial layers, and that's how light I went. I mean, I was holding the very close to the end of the pencil and just very light layers, and that's what, you know, they tell you to do and or suggest, and you can bear down hard, but again, you might not be able to blend over it if you push down so hard you burnish it. And with these, I wasn't sure how they were going to act, and that's why I wanted to try them out. And I'll talk about those in their own little separate video and how I feel about them once this is finished. But I think I'm going to finish up these scales today, and then it's just a matter of finishing up the fish. Now, again, we're going to reach the point with this one where I'm going to say, what do I want to do as a background? And I can't say with 100% certainty I'm going to do a background at this point. I might just say I'm done with it. This actually got put to the side for a while because I just wasn't excited about it. And then last night I said, you know, I really need to finish this one up. And I went back, I'd done the purple scales, and so I started on the green ones. And now I'm digging it, and I want to finish it. So that will be the next one I finish. And I hope to start some new stuff this weekend. We may even do some random picks again. So last thing I want to show you really quick. As I said, this isn't going to be just a coloring book channel, I hope. I mentioned before, I'm taking weekly art lessons. And which is odd. I've always loved art. In high school, I was real creative. I wrote. I was in art club. I just was really creative back then, and that has just disappeared over the years. It's just, kind of went into its own dark recesses of my head. My cluttered head, it was stuck in a hole somewhere. So really, even though we've been going through techniques and learning some theory, color theory, I think it's called rule of thirds, and a few other things that either I needed a refresher on or I was never taught. As we've been going through these last few weeks, the thing I've noticed that's really kind of neat is as I grow on the side of just coloring, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing in coloring actually coincides with the stuff that I'm doing in art class. And that's really kind of cool to me because they're working together. And the biggest problem I have right now is finding enough time to do just art and finding enough time to color. And so moving forward, probably my goal is to do some sort of art every day. Like you would write in a journal every day for 10-15 minutes. I need to do something non-color, not adult coloring books, but just actual art. And I have an art journal and I want to do that. Have some other pieces I want to do. So I'll show you this real quick. My intention wasn't to create flowers in a vase. This is actually, I cannot remember the actual phrase she used, but this was a technique where it's basically establishing a palette and using the color wheel. And so basically we used acrylic paint, used our fingers and paper towels. I mean, brushes were not involved in this. And you pick some complementary colors, you put it all out on a palette, and then you just, you do this, but you mix some of the colors and this and that. And the awesome thing about this is that you may start out with a red, orange, a blue, and a yellow green, but when you start mixing the colors together, you kind of realize, like, if red orange is going to be red and yellow to make orange. So you put red and then you put yellow down on there, you can get your red orange, but then you realize, well, with red orange in it, I can just use the red and, like, you know, put some of that there. I mixed the blue and the yellow. Boy, I'm forgetting basic stuff here. The blue and the yellow, and I darkened it a little bit, and I got this color, and then I got these really, and now I could go to a coloring book page and I could say these are all the colors I'm going to use, and they'll work together, and I think that's really cool. If I get her blessing, I actually would like to do one of these and do a video as I'm doing it too, because I think this would be really helpful for a lot of people that have trouble with picking colors and palettes and stuff. And cheap acrylic paint is, you know, you don't have to use expensive stuff, and this is just like a thick mixed media paper. So after a couple months of doing some different things in art, like I said, the biggest thing was about helping me be more creative and tap into that, like dust the poor little creative they're all hamsters in my head. Why aren't they cats? That sounds odd. But dust off the creative hamster, pull him out of his little hiding spot, and give him some room to roam. And so that was the biggest thing. And she just wanted to give me the tools, and she wanted me to be able to just sit there and not look to her and say, okay, what do you want me to do next? But say, oh, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I have this idea. So we did a piece on, this is really heavy paper. I think she said 300 pounds. That sounds weird, but anyway, really thick paper, because we were going to do layering, basically, you know, and this kind of applies to art journaling or even coloring in some cases, depending on what media you're using. If you don't like what you put down, a lot of times you can just go over it with something else. And that's what she wanted me to do, is not just toss something. And if you go over it, sometimes all that comes together and creates like its own piece. And so we started working on this, and this was a finished piece. We got to the point of, I think, putting in a few of these little papers, and the colors, the paint underneath. And then she kind of just was like, hey, you know, you go with it and see what you can come up with. And I know it looks kind of like a mess right now, but I had so much fun with this when I actually made myself sit down and take the time for this. And that's another problem. When you actually do sit down and say, I'm going to do this, next thing you know, 3 hours has went by and you're like, oops, I didn't mean to spend that whole time on it. So it does, it gets you engrossed. And this was the same way. When I actually did work on it, it just took my time, like, and next thing you know, 3 hours goes by. But so I just, you know, I used puzzle pieces, and again, it was all about layering. All these little papers are all Mod Podge, and I had the bright idea of getting newsprint. Where is it? It says Wicked. It's a little hard to read. I did a charcoal rubbing over the little paperback book I have that's Wicked, and it turned out really neat. And so down here, I also just did some scribbles, and then I tore the paper. It's supposed to, you know, look like old paper that is just burned, and, you know, kind of create something mysterious. So I did that, and I knew I had to spray fixative over it to keep the charcoal from smearing. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to burn the edges of it and everything. And see, I had the bright idea of putting fixative on it before I burned it. And I'm probably lucky I didn't set the house on fire. So, anyway, I felt so weird about this at times, but now in looking at it, I really dig it. And you can see my little paw prints down there. Like this is somebody I don't know. I'll talk about that in an upcoming video, but, anyway, I love it. And it really, that right there shows how much I've kind of relaxed over the course of a couple months. Now we're getting into some drawing, and so I'll have to do some videos about that. But I would also like to do just regular art like that and do some videos about it. So hopefully down the road I can do that as well. So again, so many options, so little time. Wow. Initially with the introduction and going through the pages, I had 40 minutes. And so now I've been talking about the pages and non-introduction stuff for now officially 15 minutes. Hopefully you've kind of stuck around, and if you have, I really appreciate it. Hopefully you are somewhat entertained. At the very least, maybe I can provide some amusement while you're coloring, or give you something in the background to listen to, especially if you like Southern accents. If you do this, this is me. I'll be lucky if you can understand me maybe half the time. So anyway, I'm not sure what the next video is going to be yet. Like I said, the Lost Ocean piece I'm trying to finish up. That may actually be it. I can talk a little bit about the Arteza pencils and how they work in some of the books, which I've got to try a couple others. But that may be what I do, is go over the Arteza pencils, which I dig. I really do. They're not Prismacolors, but they do lay down really easily, and they are a great middle range option, especially if you don't want to use up your Prismacolors like super fast, but you still want that kind of punch of color and that, a little bit smoother and easier lay down. So anyway, I'll talk about that in more detail in that video. And then after I get done with that one, and at some point finish that title page, I'm not sure what I want to do next. So I might spend some time putting together my little random coloring book and media chooser thing. Boy, that wasn't a word. I kind of want to try faces. I want to try blending faces with maybe one with colored pencil, one with pan pastels, one with the Copic markers. I bought a set of Copic markers for my own little birthday present. I still haven't opened those. I think I'm intimidated by them because they're expensive, as most people know, and I'm a little intimidated by them. I don't know. So I'm going to have to break out of that and get into my comfort zone. Sorry, I have a cat that's desperately trying to get between me and this phone, and he can wait a few minutes. But I kind of want to try faces. I started using some watercolor pencils. I got some Hero watercolor pencils for my birthday from my mother-in-law, and I've tried them a little bit on watercolor paper on a page I printed out, and they're beautiful. Like, I really dig them, and so now I kind of want to do those too. So yeah, I have a lot of things I want to try, and I don't know where to go next. So it will be interesting. You will probably find out at the same time I do. And at the very least, like I said, if I can entertain somebody with my ridiculousness on here, then, if I brighten someone else's day, then I've accomplished something, and I hope that happens. So anyway, if I don't put up another video, have a wonderful weekend, and I'll see you soon. Bye.